Hello and welcome back to the Yoga Well podcast. I'm Chase Bossart. I was a longtime student of Mr. TKV Deshikachar, and on this podcast we talk about all things Vini Yoga. Today on the podcast I have Nancy Rue, who is a very accomplished author and lives in Nashville. Nancy, introduce yourself a little bit to our audience, please.
I am Nancy Rue, not to be confused with Nancy Drew, which I get a lot. And I wanted to be her, actually, when I was a kid and would read those books. And then at some point, I just decided I didn't want to be her, because who can? She was perfect. But I wanted to write about someone like her for girls like me. So my dream really started at about age 10. And since then, I've written a lot of books, a lot of them for girls that age. And then I became a writing mentor, even though I still write. I'm not publishing as much, but I have mentored writers. And now I lead a group called the Scribbling Women, which is exactly
Wow,
what it sounds like. Yeah.
the Scribbling Women. I
Yes.
love it. How
Yes.
often do they meet?
We are engaged all the time on our Facebook group, and then we have a Zoom session every month. We have silent scribbling sessions. Once in a while, we have a wine and cheese party. That's WHINE. And it has really become just a group of encouragement and support.
I love it. That's fantastic. That sounds great. And then, how did we come about to meet?
It started with a headache, actually. I had a headache right here for 2 years that never went away. And after many tests and all those things, it was determined that I had new persistent daily headache, which means we don't know what the Sam Hill's wrong with you. And so finally, my neurologist referred me to the Osher Center. I think she just kind of wanted to be done with me. And there, they explained to me that I had central sensitization, which simply means that my pain part of my brain that governs pain was like a car alarm that keeps going off even though no one's touching the car. And she asked me, have you ever practiced yoga? Which I had off and on for many years, but never seriously in a studio. It never really gave me the experience that I was reading about, right? And so she set me up with a yoga therapist, and that person was Melissa Shaw.
Yeah,
And
amazing practitioner.
oh,
She's wonderful.
she has been amazing. And within 2 months, the headache was gone. And we have continued to work together for 3 years now. And at one point in 2020, toward the fall, she said, the institute that I'm associated with is Yoga Well, and we're offering a Deepen Your Yoga program. I think I'd like to recommend you for that. And my first thought was, that sounds like some serious stuff, right? But she did, and you and I chatted on Zoom, and I began that year-long program. And I have to tell you, I looked around the very first night and thought, okay, well, I am the oldest person in this group, and I am the least experienced person in this group. And as time went on, I also learned I'm never going to be the smartest girl in the class in this group, which has always kind of been my MA. If I'm an MO, if I'm going to do something, then I want to be the best at it that I can possibly be. It was a wonderfully humbling and life-changing experience. I can't even say enough about how I felt transformed, even though I was constantly fumbling through it. Experience design was way over my head. Took me forever to learn the chants. And yet, the experience of being in that community, of learning from you things that I could actually apply to my life. Authenticity has always been important to me, and I realized about midway through DIY that I'd always tried to be authentic with my mind.
Yeah.
And I was taught how to become authentic by allowing my true self to arise through the practice of yoga.
Wow. Thank you, Nancy. For those who don't know, DYY, Deepen Your Yoga program, is a 300-hour practitioner training that we offer at the Yoga Well Institute. And I am the main faculty member, but we also have a number of assistant faculty. And we meet regularly one night a week, plus for 3 hours, plus a bunch of Saturday intensives. And it's really explicitly a practitioner training. It's meant for people who can see this yoga works. Like, my headache is getting better, or my back is better, or wow, I'm really different at work. And I think it's the yoga that's making that change, but I don't know why. And I want to explore yoga more. And in the yoga world, teacher trainings are kind of the main currency. It's like, if you want to go deeper in yoga, you have to train to be a teacher. But from our perspective, if you want to be a good teacher, you have to have all the experiences first. You have to actually have in your body, in your emotions, in your mind, the effects of yoga, and then you can teach from that place. So we don't really actually like to do teacher trainings. We like to do practitioner trainings, because once you have discovered it and you know it and it's in you, well, then it's easy to teach. And then it's just a matter of creativity. How can I present this in a way that allows the other person to find it in themselves? And so that's the program you ended up in.
I did. And I ended up is really the operative phrase there. And that does translate into other things that you do. As a mentor, I'm constantly teaching in the groups that I lead, and I apply yoga to that all the time. The things that I have learned, in particular, the Bhagavad Gita, which we studied in DYY. And the place where Krishna teaches Arjuna the little process when you're making a decision. What do you actually know? And given that information, what is yours to do? And then look at your state. And I have shared that with so many people, and I have applied it to my own experiences. And it is so simple, but not necessarily easy.
Yeah, yeah, it's so nice. Yeah, give a little context. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's teaching to Arjuna is so powerful. And it's very poetic and beautiful to read, etc. And it can be easy to miss the sort of core principles of what he's giving there, which are, in any difficult situation, what do you know? What do you actually know? Not what do you think the situation will become tomorrow or next week or next year, or what will happen down the road, etc. What do you know now? And then, what is your role in the situation as you know it now? And if that has not already made clear what it is yours to do and what is not yours to do, the final question is, what is your state? Because if you have gotten clear about what the actual situation is and what your role is, what to do is actually quite clear. Unless we're really out of balance, unless we're really have no stability and have lost your equanimity. And then it'll be very hard to decide what to do, etc. So yoga has this process where we are giving people techniques to help them regain their equanimity or come back to balance. And then also giving the structures by which they can start to evaluate every situation they're in. Like, well, what do I know about this situation? And what is my role? Because lots of times you may know a lot, but your role is quite minor, and that means there is nothing for you to do. And that's a
So
big,
often the
yeah, so
answer
often.
is nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's such a big learning for a lot of people. And, the opposite can also be true where you know a lot about the situation and you play a small but critical role.
Mm,
So you have something you actually really important that you have to do that you may have been thinking, well, somebody else might be able to do this,
yeah,
or why is
yeah.
it that I have it? But once you get clear, like, oh no, like this is my role to do it, then it gives you a little oomph to actually go and do it.
One of the things I loved most in DIY was studying yoga philosophy. And what I loved discovering was in Vini Yoga, in the Yoga Sutras, there's a process for everything. And one of the other things is that I have never been terribly in touch with my own body. Always in my head, always a very cerebral person, except for the creative part, but still, I was not fully embodied. And learning how to pay attention to your state has been huge for me and has eliminated a lot of the physical pain that I've been in my whole adult life, as well as a lot of the emotional pain because the body does tell you a story. It's a whole thing, right?
That's fascinating. Um, Thank you for sharing that. The whole point of this program is that yoga is a game of perception, and its main topic is why are you experiencing life the way you are? And here's a way to evaluate it, and here's some tools that is can help you shift it. And that takes some time. That takes some time. An intellectual, this is not primarily an intellectual learning. There is a lot of intellectual
Mhm.
aspects to it, but really the main part of what it is this experiential learning. It's like cooking or dance or music.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you don't become a good cook overnight. You have to actually cook a lot of things and experiment and
Right.
fail and not want to eat it. And, you
I
know,
want to throw it out.
yeah. So our program is, it's 15 months specifically to give people time to wrestle with some of the things that come up. And
Mm.
what I like to say about the material is that it's challenging. It is going to highlight what are the things that I'm doing that are uh, causing myself pain and um, disturbing me from being the best version of myself,
Mm.
and therefore preventing me from experiencing the best version of my life.
I have loved your use of the word patterns. For me, that having that visual of this pattern has just kicked in, and I didn't even realize it. Being able to be very clear on those is really a big deal. And I remember one meditation in on a Wednesday morning. You led us through what is one thing that you do that kicks in and it's not a good thing. You don't like it. You hate it when you do that. It's the kind of thing that makes you, pace the floor after a party and go, why again? And then you asked us, who is doing that? Which part of yourself is doing it? And I had this immediate, it was little 7-year-old Nancy who needed to perform. And then there was a long, story behind that was so enlightening for me. And I'm almost 72 years old. So there is always so much to learn, which is why I love the fact that I didn't just go through this, year-long program. At that point, it was a year, right? I didn't just go through that program and then I'm good to go. It's the continuing Wednesday mornings and every other week, the discussion class. It continues to deepen. I think the depths are endless, really, to which you can go.
Yeah, the gift, well, there's many gifts of what Mr. Deshikachar gave, but one of the main ones is lifelong learning. This is a continually unfolding process, and what you know about it also continues to deepen and unfold. And what we try to do in the Deepen Your Yoga program is to set the foundation and provide the launch pad for future studies. And our joke is, okay, here it is, the end of 300 hours, or however long our training is, and now you're ready to begin studying.
Yeah. That was the end of the beginning.
That was the end. That was the end of the beginning. And
Right.
now you can actually do some serious studies. And,
Absolutely.
at the Yoga Well Institute, we have structured our offerings in a way that allows for and really is organized around this long time process, right? So we have our Wednesday morning meditations, which are just a half hour on Wednesday, but then twice a month, right after that. So after the second and last Wednesday of every month, then we have a discussion, and it's an hour. And the discussion explains, okay, meditation is a intentionally engineered experience, and that experience can be lots of different things. So where you put your attention matters, because wherever you put your attention has qualities, and those qualities influence your experience, which changes how you feel and how your system operates, etc. And, oh, by the way, in order to prepare for meditation, we have to have some changing of our state. We do that by breathing and by moving, or by sound. But the breathing and the moving and sound is not all the same. Different techniques have different qualities, thereby coloring the experience of where you put your attention. And the same object can be colored different ways by different preparations. And it's just so rich. So we have the Deepen Your Yoga program. We explain, here's the foundations of meditation. Here's the foundations of experience design. Here's how to think about the creation of a yoga practice in which you can have real goals.
Yes.
I want this person to feel contented, or I want this person to recognize, as you're saying, the performative pattern that is causing me to, put distance between myself and others, or, causing me to have regrets or shame or whatever it is, right? And you can organize the practice to have a result and, a direction of where that result will go. And then after we have presented, like, okay, here's how the whole thing works. Now, well, it's not after, because we're also giving you Wednesday mornings as we go along. But now you're done with the program. Here is another avenue. Just be in this meditation practice with the discussions afterwards. And over the course of months and years, how you think about yoga and how you are able to articulate what it does, and your knowledge of all the different philosophical pieces, etc., they all will continue to deepen and grow together and really coalesce into this really deep knowledge. And I have to say that I feel that what we're doing at the Yoga Well Institute is really, it's a wonderful thing. And
Indeed, indeed. And I think the part that we haven't talked about is the sense of community.
Mm.
That first of all, in DIY, you're with people, and there were a lot of tears and some really deep sharing that connects you with people. And then there's River, which is also, helpful. But that continues in those discussion classes at sessions. And I have made friends that I've never met in person, but we including you, right? But we Zoom on the regular and text and share where we're going with everything. I may never meet these people, but I consider them to be some of my deepest relationships. And you foster that, Chase. You really do. You make it so easy to not only connect with each other, but you make it very safe for people to be transparent when we share. There's
Thank you,
never any
Nancy.
judgment. You can't get it wrong.
Really, you can't get it wrong.
No,
That's
and there
really
aren't
the
many
truth. You can't.
situations in life where that's the case, right?
Right. Thank you. I really think for me as the lead teacher, I depend on the participants. This is such a rich teaching. There are so many different things to say about any one particular aspect of it that very often as the teacher, you can't remember all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
there's just too much. And so I depend on the participants to ask questions and to share. And then that triggers stuff.
Right,
And
right.
then we get teachings that are really applicable to what's going on in the
Where we
room
are.
and where we are. And in order for that to happen, people have to feel like they can share and offer up really things about themselves that are a little sensitive, and that they're going to be respected, and that not only respected but honored actually. And
Mm.
I think we are really fortunate to attract people who do a good job of sharing and being vulnerable, and really working, to be transparent and authentic and all of those things. And the community really shows up and holds space for people. I have to say, it's really beautiful to watch. It's really beautiful to be a part of.
And that has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? The Wednesday mornings.
Yeah, Wednesday morning has been continuous for, I think, at least 12 years, maybe 13. Yeah. I missed
I've only been
one
a
in
part of
that
it for
time.
3, and you never do the same thing twice. But that doesn't mean there isn't continuity.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, the real thing for me in calling it the Deepen Your Yoga program, a practitioner's training, is what I want to have happen is for people to understand the context of yoga. Because, if you go on YouTube or if you go to any yoga
Mm-mm.
school or studio, there's so much information about do it this way, do it that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
The techniques, we have too much information, but
Right.
the why is a little bit harder to find.
It's neglected.
And it gets in that void, it gets converted into Western or allopathic or psychological explanations. And yoga actually has its own explanations and its own context and its own very well developed and clear philosophy
Mhm.
about how these practices influence your body, your breath, your mind, your behavior, your emotions, and thereby facilitate change. And it's a coherent path. We just need a guide and some understanding of what the path is.
And the other piece of that is that you in Vini Yoga and at Yoga Well encourage us to have a mentor and to work with someone one-on-one so that I can say to Melissa, we did something on Wednesday morning that I really liked. Does that fit? And she will sometimes say, no, because she knows me and she knows what my needs are and what my goals are, because I think otherwise I would be going, I think I'm going to try this for a month and see what happens. And then that constantly changes my practice, though, as my body changes, as my needs change, because it isn't one and done. And that's significant at this stage, at this season of my life, being in my early 70s, having retired about 4 years ago from mentoring. And it could have been a very difficult time because being a recovering workaholic and being in the spotlight a lot in my niche, it could have been very hard to accept that that isn't happening now. So who am I? What am I worth? I might have to make some kind of splash here and go into performance mode. And my entire association with Vini Yoga has made this probably my favorite season so far. In terms of authenticity, my relationships are deeper and more honest. My writing is better and certainly more genuine. And so it's actually fun to be 72 years old.
Wow. Oh, it's so great. Tell me a little bit about your writing is better.
Well, I used to write for the Christian market, and that's how I made my living for about 25 years. Most of what I did was for young people, but I did some contemporary women's fiction, some nonfiction for kids as well as fiction. And there are a lot of limitations there. I never wrote anything that I didn't believe, but I realized as that was, as time went on, that I wasn't saying everything that I did believe. But I had an audience and there were some parameters within which you had to stay. So I made the decision right around the time that I joined Yoga Well that I was going to pursue the general market. And yet I still wanted my writing to be wanted to be spiritual because I am. And we are spiritual. What are we? We are spiritual beings living in a human body or something, right? And yoga has really helped me to come to terms with exactly what I do believe and how to express that in a way that reflects that. And I also feel like I'm more brave, have more courage to try some things and write about some things that I haven't before. Things like really deep grief and confusing ethics. Everything is not black and white, which I think is important in our society today because we are so divided. And I've tackled some really sort of difficult topics like infertility and infidelity and things that the Christian market really didn't want to touch. So whether I'm published again, that's the other thing. We learn in yoga that outcomes are not the important thing, right? We can't count on a specific outcome. We may have goals, we have ideals. And so I have no idea what the outcome is going to be. The market has changed since I first started out. And I don't have 10,000 followers on Twitter, which is one of those writerly requirements these days. But I'm enjoying simply the process, the expression, rather than wondering, is my agent going to find a home for this? And that actually fosters more creativity and more authenticity when we're not thinking, what editor is going to slash this?
That's awesome. That's so great. How far along are you in the, or how near are you to giving it to the editor?
So the first book is in a series of 4, is finished, and my agent is shopping it around. And I'm 300 pages into the second book in the series, even though there's no real evidence that the first one's going to be published. But these days there is self-publishing. And I see that as kind of an act of courage that, I'm not being validated by traditional houses the way I was before. But you know what? If I feel like this is important enough to put it out there, then that can be done. And I like that about the current publishing world. It is not vanity publishing anymore. It is an act of courage. And I didn't know that until it just came out of my mouth just now. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. Tell me a little bit about the personal corners that happened in Deepen Your Yoga. So
But I
you
tried.
mentioned about you recognize this pattern of performative, like, so if I get anxious, then my protection is I will do something performative. And then that is how I manage the feeling, or and correct me if I'm wrong, but tell me a little
No.
bit more about that, and what changed and how did it change. And, I hear you saying, so my relationships are much deeper now and more intimate, and um, you know, connect those dots for me, please.
Well, it began in Deepen Your Yoga and then continued on the Wednesday mornings. And going back to discovering little 7-year-old Nancy, right, who was at the root of this performative thing. Okay. And I realized that at 7, my 17-year-old brother was killed in a drag racing accident. And my poor parents, I mean, they did the best they could, but they really could not give my sister and I everything that we were used to, right? And so I began to perform just to make sure that I still existed in their lives, right? And that just simply continued because it was working for me. And it worked academically, it worked in the writing world, it worked in the speaking world. It even, I thought, worked in relationships. And when I became better acquainted with little 7-year-old Nancy, who was going, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. I agreed with her. I started taking her on little artist dates. Let's just go to the children's section at the bookstore and hang out. Sort of reparenting myself a little bit. But then I realized in some of my best friendships, people were saying, I called you because you always cheer me up. And so I began to be a little bit more transparent about what might be going on with me and asking, what do you think about this? And not always being Susie cheerleader. And that really has made my relationships more equal, more balanced. And I like that because really, I had so many jaw issues. I had several surgeries on my jaw from holding all of that. And then, doing this. It has just helped tremendously. And yes, it takes time, but I think maybe because I'm older and a little bit wiser, that these discoveries are coming to me very clearly and very quickly. It's almost as if God goes, you don't have that much time. We got to make this happen, right? Another one of those was in our meditation about the moon. And I have never really enjoyed the night sky, meditating on a starry sky or anything, but okay, I'm going to give this a shot. And she suddenly became this beautiful silver-haired woman who had so much wisdom to share. And then you said, focus on her blemishes. And I realized those aren't blemishes. Those are the evidence of things that have happened to her. And I am a person who, if I have made a mistake in the past, it will keep coming back to me and I cringe out loud. Like, oh, I mean, sometimes my husband will say, you okay? No, just having a memory. And as we did that meditation, it came to me that I have really learned from those past mistakes. So there's no shame there anymore. The blemishes are what make the moon beautiful. And I really wouldn't be who I am if I had not erred in some pretty big ways but learned from them. That's the key. we do bear the scars, but they can be beautiful if we have learned. And so I'm continuing to, and I think that's what's exciting, is knowing I'm not done, and I won't be done forever.
That's very touching. Thank you for sharing that. It's really true. Those are not blemishes.
Mm.
That's the whole point. But there's a difference between the intellectual understanding of that and a full body knowing of that, and the way that it is transformative when we have that that
I do
knowing.
love the word knowing. It's not belief. It's not understanding. It's knowing. And I know because those memories aren't really coming up anymore. And I know because I shrink away from performing. Not always.
Sure.
I still turn it on when but I'm not doing it now. So just so you know.
Right. So you can really see that you've turned some corners in the different, your behavior is different.
Yes, it is.
Actually, this cringe is not happening.
No.
Yeah.
A friend was just visiting me who I've known since college, so 50 years, right? And she looked at me one day and she said, "There's something different. You are so calm. There's a peace about you." Those are not things that people have ever really said about me. They will say, "You're so vivacious. You're so bubbly." But the calm and peaceful, I really had tears in my eyes. This is someone who knows me well.
What a beautiful compliment.
Yeah, it truly was. Perfect? No.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Just like the moon.
Right, exactly. And learning to accept those, but not stay there.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
never ending process, of the journey of yoga, that's so reassuring to know
Yeah.
you never have to say, "Okay, got this."
Yeah. So good.
Well, I have a question for you. Yoga Well seems to be ever evolving, and new approaches. I mean, the unified foundation is always the same, but you obviously are very creative. How does that come to you?
Thank you. I don't think of myself as that way, so thank you. I watched Mr. Deshikachar. He was so generous with me. When I was in India, and I spent almost 5 years there, he basically gave me free access to, if he went to give a lecture or if he was seeing clients at the mandiram, or if he was like teaching a group of foreigners, or when I was in India, I was welcome to basically tag along. And the thing that I really stuck out to me is that he never said this, he never said it, the same information, the same way. He was always interested, and he was always in, I really saw it as a conscious decision of his to say something new about whatever old topic that he had already taught, for 50 years. And it's so inspiring. Somebody is being vivacious and creative and engaged and interested and trying to find new ways to connect and draw things together. And, Krishnamacharya had several teachers. And one of the things that stands out about Mr. Deshikachar is that he lived with him for the last 30 years of Krishnamacharya's life. And just had continual teachings that whole time. And there was a lot of personal evolution with Mr. Deshikachar, obviously, and a lot of evolution in his teachings. And I think as the recipient of that kind of legacy, it's interesting and fun to be, how can you make yoga, this ancient
Mm.
wisdom that's actually so applicable to any person, anybody, how can you make that relevant to today's culture and that kind of thing? And, you know, what I see about Mr. Deshikachar as a student and as a teacher was that his teachings were digested. So when he taught, I don't feel that he, of course, I never met Krishnamacharya, so I can't confirm this in any objective way, but I don't feel that he simply parroted what he heard. I feel that he took it on, he took it in, he worked with it, he understood it, he got burned by it, he got nourished by it, he had a real experience, or I should say, strings of experiences around it, so that when he taught, he was not teaching something that was an idea or a memorization, or it was something that was like digested in him.
Mm.
That's very inspiring. And you know, there's a saying about, if you hold the root of something, then you can go all the way out to any leaf or any
Mhm.
blossom or any branch. But if you are really knowledgeable about the leaf or the branch, you can't necessarily go to something
Mm.
else. And I feel that that way of orienting around yoga is
Mhm.
really fundamental to it. And I try to be I tried to emulate his amazing example.
And I see that same kind of digestion in you. You seem to be saturated in caring about this legacy and about the people that you serve here. Really,
Thank
I
you.
think every one of us feels that we're important to you.
Thank you.
So don't tell me if you're not, okay?
Just a minute, I'll perform.
Right? I'll tell you how to do that too.
Super. Nancy, what a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's been my
And
pleasure and an honor. And I have one hope. I have many hopes, but one of them is that someday I will have the privilege of meeting you in person and feeling that energy that just exudes from you even across the internet.
thank you, Nancy. You know, we are planning a another therapist training to be based in Nashville to start in
Oh,
October of 2024. So I will be in your neighborhood and we
I
can
will
certainly
be
meet
there
in
to
person.
volunteer for whatever you need.
All
Airport
right.
pickups, whatever. I'm yours.
Super. All right.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
Chip.
again. Thank you so much.